So, I'm over here doing this video and everything. And one of the things I really do truly struggle with is, when you're black, one of the hard things about like legitimately having a culture that's so whose history, especially in America, has been so laced in tragedy. Um, Whether that be we tried and then things didn't work out, or we're talented and didn't get taken advantage of. It's really hard to kind of like always have this positive perspective on things, especially when like it always feels like it keeps ending, tragically, which, for the most part it has so far. Um, but one thing I always try to look for is the silver lining and like try to find the strength that made them get to that point. So there's one event that keeps coming up that people keep talking about a lot is Greenwood, Black Wall Street, Tulsa race riots, which happened in 1921. And, the tragedy behind it is that it got all destroyed. But I think that there's so many details that were missed that led to the building up of it, that if we could recreate those things, then I believe that we truly could find strength within ourselves. So, instead of focusing on the burning and focusing on, the tragedy and like, look at what white folks did and all these different things, like, I really have decided to look at how the freak do these people get this mess done. And that's one of the most amazing things about, especially what happened in Greenwood and Tulsa. There's so many small, minute details, smaller research I've done that really does show so much of a human side and so many parallels to where we are today. And if we can learn to really, learn from those mistakes or learn from their strength that got them built up, man, we could do so many great things. So I decided to put this piece together, and it's called the Tulsa Perspective, because it's not always about tragedy. Sometimes there's strength in it. So hope you listen, hope you give it a try. Hope you'll find some strength in it, no matter who you are, black, white, Asian, Russian, Ukrainian. Probably shouldn't have said that part. But and move on from there.
A lot of people have been waking up to the tragedy that was the Tulsa race riots of 1921. And even though horrifying and tragic can barely describe this atrocity, I think that anger has clouded our ability to truly see. Anger can blind us if we're not careful. It can keep us stuck in a victim role. At least for me, it can. Constantly waiting for someone to make it go away and acknowledge the trauma and terrible things that have been done to me. And if I'm not careful, it can take away the power instilled in me. The truth is, what these people were able to accomplish, in spite of all that was against them, deserves to be idolized. A question that needs to be pondered on us is, why the hell would someone want to change when it's working out so well for them? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And in their world, it ain't broken. As a matter of fact, it's working out wonderfully. As long as we keep waiting for people who benefit from our inferiority complex and dependency on them to make things better, we will never know freedom. That's what makes the story of Greenwood so special. You're looking at a people who just came from hundreds of years of not just physical oppression and trauma, but mental oppression and trauma. People whose skills were taken and helped to build an entire country, while simultaneously having families sold off like cattle and being beaten and even killed for doing something as humane as reading. You're looking at a free people who only knew dependency on those same people who traumatized them. They had a skill that they themselves came to devalue because those they looked to said it was nothing, even though it was everything, including the land Greenwood was built on, which was rich with oil in the early 1900s, bruh. You take those people and send them into a cruel, vengeful, and scared world. One thing that can be shown is the compassion and love humanity possesses when vulnerable people are done wrong. Because in other people, the Native Americans who were displaced, abused, mistreated, and killed, saw their suffering and decided to help them out. In an act of kindness, these Native Americans gave them a shot to rebuild their lives and sold some land to these people. How incredible is that? How many of us have people who can see our suffering and they want to help? But also, how many of us have too much pride to accept that help? How many of us refuse to acknowledge that we're in a horrific situation to begin with? How much has pride stopped us from levitating? Pride didn't stop them though. They bought the land and they decided their pride could take a back seat to a much bigger cause. Despite everything against these people from the outside world and even their inner demons, they found a way not only to survive, but thrive. They didn't need a perfect environment where everyone liked them in order to be great. That's something I need to remember. The trauma, confusion, and just outright fear didn't stop them from trying to do and build better. They recognized their reality and found ways around it. They united against a common enemy, and that common enemy wasn't just white people, by the way. The enemy was fear, low self-esteem, worthlessness, dependency, codependency, victimhood, which by the way is hard to break, especially when you've truly been a victim of someone else's inhumane cruelty. And after facing that, they had to build back within themselves courage, safety, self-worth, and pride. And all we want to do is focus on the tragedy? Look past the smoke. Look past the fire, and you'll see a strength beyond anything in human history. But there's still things I can learn from them that we all can learn. Because even though we can recognize fear, doesn't always mean we handle it correctly. And that was apparent when Dick Rowland, a black kid from Greenwood, was accused of raping a white girl. The fear took over again. The fear of what was. The fear of how it's happened before. The fear of the past repeating itself. Even though nothing had technically happened just yet. And man, that's hard not to live in that fear. Especially when A plus B has always equaled C. And they had reason to be scared. The KKK had come and broke someone out of jail and lynched them. And it wasn't just anyone. This was a white boy. So these people in Greenwood thinking, if they do that to him, imagine what they'll do to us, who they hate. But one thing that we never account for is maybe our kindness, peace, and strength has had a bigger effect on people than we may know. Because the sheriff truly learned from that. He took his job serious and wanted to be there for everyone. And so when Dick Rowland got arrested, he refused to let this boy be kidnapped. He just wanted a chance to redeem himself. But the situation looked far too similar to the people of Greenwood. Sometimes when we try to prevent something that hasn't happened yet, we often end up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Which is tough. And when the people of Greenwood showed up, the jealous and poor white supremacists showed up, and everyone is fighting and ready to destroy each other. And everything gets destroyed. Even though that white sheriff was determined to do things right. He couldn't get everyone to cooperate, but he was going to be damned if he was going to let his position of power corrupt everyone. Sometimes all it takes is one. I'm determined to look at these people for who they really are. Pioneers of those who actually made the changes and broke free from dependency and created a community out of chaos. Love in the midst of hate. Culture in the midst of confusion. Success in the midst of oppression. And we at Wholism look at them as heroes. I especially do. And their legacy will live on. Not because of what happened to them, but because of what they were able to accomplish in spite of all the shit that they were handed from birth. With a little perspective, with little reframing, we can change a tragic narrative into one where power can be generated. So the question is, what strength can you find in yourself, in your situation, in spite of the trauma, the destruction, the sadness you face? What have you been able to accomplish in spite of all of that shit? Let us know. We'd love to hear. And salute to all the fallen pioneers in this culture who fought and thrived in spite of everything against them. Thank you, Greenwood. We will honor you for the example that you've set and the lessons we can learn for a better future.